best way to live with diabetes is to not live with it alone. That's why Walgreens pharmacists are here for you 24/7 with expert advice and savings on medications and supplies. Just bring in your prescriptions. We can even show you how to get rewarded for healthy behaviors, like logging your glucose. Because Walgreens knows that taking control of diabetes takes an extra hand. Walgreens, at the corner of happy and healthy.
Get a free private consultation with an expert Walgreens pharmacist today.
Celebrate life's unforgettable moments with Pandora charms and bracelets from Jared, the Galleria of Jewelry. For a limited time only, with any $100 Pandora purchase, you'll receive a free sterling silver Pandora clasp bracelet or bangle. Or with any $500 Pandora purchase, get a free sterling silver and 14-karat gold clasp bracelet. But hurry in from March 19th through 22nd or while supplies last. See store for details.
Well, good afternoon, and it's Justice for All. I'm George Yates, and here we are on 1650 for the next couple of hours, and I hope you're enjoying yourself out there today, ladies and gentlemen. It is a lovely day out there on this lovely Saturday, and I was coming into the studio today from Virginia Beach, and man, it was crowded. Traffic jam all the way. Was it Shamrock Marathon, I guess, going on? I thought that wasn't until tomorrow, so maybe this is just the lead up to the Shamrock, but it's crazy down at the oceanfront today. So if you're making it down the Virginia Beach oceanfront, be prepared for some traffic backups. But lovely day. I guess everybody's wanting to get out and enjoy all this sunshine. It's about time. It's been a long winter. Here we are, first day of spring, and it's going to be a really great show today. In our first hour, we've got Michael Tennesen is the author of this awesome new book called The Next Species, The Future of Evolution in the Aftermath of Man. And you're thinking, whoa, that's a pretty heavy title here. The Next Species. You're thinking, well, I mean, we've got him here in the studio today with us to talk about this book, to deal with a lot of the problems that we're having in the world today with the global warming and CO2 and greenhouse gases and the future of man and woman on this planet. How are you doing, Michael Tennesen?
I'm doing pretty good, George. How are you?
I'm great. Listen, this is a great book. I had a chance to read it, and I'm also looking at your the news from Simon & Schuster, which outlines the details behind this book. But your book covers so much ground that it's just amazing. Talking about the basic premise of the book is that life as we know it on Earth could well be headed for another mass extinction where the human species and other plants just die out. And you think, gosh, that's terrible. And then you realize when you read your book, you go, well, it's happened 5 times before, so
right,
no big deal.
Right.
No big deal. We're going to wipe out human beings and all the plants and animals, but the Earth will still be here after all of this. That's what is the most amazing thing about your book.
Well, nature will survive. You know, man has, you and I and Homo sapiens have a limited lifespan. And but the idea is basically we want to enjoy what we've got right here now. And if we could actually pull back and take a look at a better look at ourselves in that we are part of nature rather than the whole reason for its existence, we could last a little longer, enjoy it a little more, enjoy the weather that we're having.
Yeah, and your book, you when you start off, you travel all over the planet. You went to some incredible places, rainforests and coral reefs, and that incredible spot out in Texas, that Guadalupe.
Yeah.
Tell us about your travels in writing this book.
Well, I guess I'm a travel bug, and there is that in there, and I like it. I've basically made a living as an adventure. Doing adventure biology, what one person described, and I love to go out to field sites where scientists are discovering stuff, and so I always look for the exotic, and I did quite a bit of travel for this, and some of this travel was done in the past. But I got to Africa. I got to the Serengeti. I got to England. I went to South America. I traveled across the United States. Interviewed like about 70 different scientists, and always tried to kind of catch them on their field sites, where they're actually doing their work, seeing nature, kind of what one person described as glory biology. I'm not much at sitting in a laboratory figuring out the data, but I love that glory biology where you get out and see the animals in their spring rites and different things like that. And so there's a lot of that in here in the book.
So what's the future of man? You're talking about a possible mass extinction within several centuries. What's the scientific basis behind that? Well,
Anthony Bernosky, a biologist at UC Berkeley, put out a scientific paper that tells us that we are in danger of a mass extinction that could happen anywhere from 300 to 2,200 years. And mass extinction, as Anthony describes it, is the loss of 75% of all species on Earth. And that's a lot. and he's not the first person to say this either. I mean, this actually goes back all the way to Richard Leakey, who wrote a book on the sixth mass extinction back in the early 90s, and way before Elizabeth Kolber did her story. And I talked with Andy Knoll and a bunch of different biologists that all are aware of the fact that we're losing species so rapidly, just kind of mowing them down, trying to feed ourselves and trying to expand our cities and our environment, and we're headed for a catastrophe.
Well, and a lot of it's not that surprising because so often you read about the acidification of the ocean, and,
right.
and with all of the global warming and the carbon in the atmosphere getting into the oceans, and you kind of say, well, at some point, if the ocean reaches a certain acid level, doesn't everything in it die?
Well, not everything in it dies. What happens is all creatures with what they call exoskeleton, like your shrimp with its little, the skin on it, the hard skin, your corals with their hard surface, mollusks, in other words, all your oysters and your clams, and all these creatures, and some of them being kind of minute that affect affect whales a lot. And that is, and you get these little tiny creatures that are expound krill and other forms of small shrimps that exist in the Arctic regions that are actually a food source for all for whales. And we're going to start. That's what we lose. We'll lose all creatures that have any kind of exoskeleton, any kind of shell or a skin, tough skin. And when you learn that, when you lose that, that's a really major portion of the biology of the ocean. And it's kind of what happened in the Permian extinction, which I get into in the book. It was, everybody knows about the asteroid that fell out of the sky at the end of the Cretaceous and what knocked out the dinosaurs. But actually, a more deadly extinction was the Permian extinction, which happened 250 million years ago. And this saw, and so what? If you look at the Permian extinction, there's acidification in the ocean. There's a loss of oxygen, loss of the abundance of sulfur in the atmosphere that comes after a period of lack of oxygen. Just a whole and global warming and climate change and all these things that really are like a list of the problems that we're having today. And that's actually what's the problem with the mass extinctions. They kind of mirror where we seem to be headed now.
Yeah, when you start talking about geologic time in your book, it it has incredible range. You talk about the geology. You talk about how the continents that we now have. Of course, at one time there was one giant landmass, and then there were two. And so you get into all the fact that the Earth has been around for 3 or 4 billion years, and human beings have only been here about 200,000 years. So when you start looking at it in terms of time like that, you say, well, if we have a mass extinction, let's say in the next 300 years or 2,200 years, and human beings are knocked out, say, well, in geologic time, you've got another 100 million years, 200 million years, then new species will come. And what? Will there be another, if human beings get knocked out, are you saying that, then there'll be another human race after this next mass extinction?
Well, I'm looking at two avenues. I mean, I was influenced initially by Weissman's book, The World Without Us, and he talked about, let's just assume man, it doesn't exist tomorrow, and so what happens? And so he talks about how long would it take for the infrastructure to fall? How long would it take for New York to hit the ground and disintegrate and go back to normal what it was before man? And I thought it was a really interesting book, but I wanted to write something that was a little more realistic, that actually looked at the biology that could happen. And so what I'm looking at is how biology goes through the mass extinctions. And what happens in the mass extinctions is you get down to a rarefied group of creatures at the mass extinction, but in coming out of the mass extinction, I mean, it's once again a flourishing of life. I went to Mount St. Helens just to kind of give an idea of that. And I visited Mount St. Helens within 10 years after the initial eruption, and saw what the land was covered with ash. And there was some, I remember there was some elk that were actually coming back in that were feeding on the grasses that grew on the ground, which were essentially weeds. And but after I went back again at the 20th anniversary, and I saw that the vegetation had started to resurface, that sprouts for trees and brush had come back. And so what happens in these mass extinctions is you go into a place where species are limited, things are pretty rough, but coming out, you get a whole other field of different creatures, what they call climax vegetation. In other words, like going into the after the extinct volcano at Mount St. Helens, they actually put this, the government actually made a area that they decided we were not going to manipulate at all. We're not going to try to grow anything back. We're going to see what it looks like. And what happens is first of all, the weedy species come back, the ones that we don't like so much, the rats, the cockroaches, in our era maybe. But what comes back starts to go through evolutionary changes, and we start to see more complex forests. And the same, like Krakatoa, when the volcano went off of Krakatoa, it just leveled the islands and leveled the spaces around it. But what's now, and this is about 125 years later, what is now at Krakatoa is thick forest and a complement of animals that is approaching what it was before. And so nature does have a way of rebounding and finding different things. So I guess what I'm doing in the book is I'm following two lines of thought. What happens if we go through this mass extinction and man doesn't survive, and we don't get another hominid or man-like creature? What would happen then? Well, what would happen then is maybe a real flourishing of species like we used to have. In the book, I talk about Captain Fanning, who visited Palmyra Atoll in the late 1700s, which is an atoll in the middle of the Pacific, in between Hawaii and Australia. And it was just, he rode into the atoll, into the bay that was created by the atoll, and as they're going in there, the sharks are biting at their udders, the rowing instruments, and when they get in, the crew goes off to pick up some coconut while the captain stays in the boat and tries to just catch the fish that are in the bay, and he ends up catching so many fish that he starts to worry that the boat will actually sink on the way back to the ship. And so that's the kind of diversity that we could have, or the kind of diversity that we had that you can see in the La Brea tar pits. They have at the La Brea tar pits, right below Los Angeles, right close, 4 miles from Hollywood. There's some deposits that go back 30,000 and 40,000 years ago that are deep under the ground. But in those deposits show just a vast amount of species of, giant ground sloths and saber-toothed tigers and sniff tigers, and there was an African lion, or there was a North American lion, and large ground sloths and mastodons and camels, and there was just this huge proliferation of different species without man. We just kind of came in and kind of messed it up, but that we could go back to. So that's one way. But then there's also, why couldn't we have another hominid? Why couldn't we have another species of man? There's been 25 species of early man, and at 50,000 years ago, which is really not that long ago in terms of, like you say, the geological time, there was 3 or 4 species of man on Earth together: Homo sapiens, Homo florensis, and Homo neanderthals as well. And there may even have been some last residuals of Homo erectus. And so we're actually, the Earth is actually can tolerate more than one species. It's just today, we're not there right now. Today we've gone through this explosion of population that, like in 1800, we had 1 billion people on Earth, and by today we have 7 billion people on Earth. So this is really just a run-up in just a very short period of time. And by the middle of the century, we'll have 9 billion, they predict, and by the end, 10 or 11. And so it's, we talk about climate change as the cause of our problems. I kind of think that really at the base of climate change, it's really population explosion.
And if you've just joined us, this is Justice for All. I'm George Yates, and we're with author Michael Tennesen, who's the author of The Next Species, The Future of Evolution in the Aftermath of Man. And your book talks about how life goes on with or without humans, but also what's fascinating about it is you also talk about, because I think a lot of us think, well, how are we going to mess it up or save ourselves? I just read it yesterday about we're changing the human genome in such a way that we can pass it on to our through heredity. And you wonder how long it's going to be before we start messing around with the human genome and either making us better or making us worse. There's kind of a scary scenario there when you think about what might well happen with if we start creating a superhuman race with the genetic tinkering, I suppose, with DNA. You also discuss in your book things like, and we've talked about this on the show before, the rise of artificial intelligence, how perhaps computers and robots might well become more intelligent than us and take over the planet from human beings. And you also mention about uploading our brains to computers so that we can live forever, in cyberspace anyway, mentally, our brains. So when you talk about the future of evolution and the aftermath of man, there's so many different scenarios that can occur. And you also talk about how animals, the number one evolutionary or adaptive characteristic for current animals on the planet today is really adapting to man. In the Darwin theory that you have to find your niche and you got to find it within the whole ecological framework, and man is so dominant on the planet today with, like you say, 7 billion, soon to be 9 billion and more. Every animal on the planet is having now to change either to adapt to man or the changing environment that man's creating.
Right. definitely. There's, you talked about some of these things, how we might get another species of man, and like the isolation is a really interesting thing. There's the idea that like European Jews created multiple Nobel Prize winners, but possibly because they went through an isolation where they didn't marry outside of their in the late mid-centuries. Where they didn't marry outside of their religion, and yet they had to deal with, essentially one of their functions was to handle trade things with the Middle Eastern people and the Europeans. And just being in that kind of a situation, there was obviously a great impetus for intelligence in the future, because they ended up with so many Nobel Prize winners compared to other populations. And so this isolation, could actually happen within the crowd. And so in the book, I talk about Google headquarters in Mountain View, California, and could that actually create? I know the Google actually picks up their people and takes them to work, and then work is like a play place where they can do volleyball and all this stuff and have all the free food they need, and they tend to work long hours, and they take them on home, and so there's really not too much interaction with other people. So could Google, being a Google employee, could that lead to another species? And you talk about Nick Bostrom's idea, the whole idea of uploading your mind into a computer. It's an interesting idea. If you can actually extend your life by doing this, I think there would tend to be a big push to do it, and then how would you survive? You would either he says that you would either live as a robot, or you would live in a virtual world. I know there's this virtual world, Second Life, and I did an article for them on that for Scientific American, and people spend 20 hours a week just in this virtual world, running around with, and they get to choose what they look like, and everybody's beautiful. And you move around. I tried to do it actually, and I had trouble moving around. I'm not really great with the computer game thing, but it's there are a lot of possibilities, and the runaway intelligence thing. James Barat did a book called it Our Final Invention, and that if we try to create AI, artificial intelligence, at some point you let the machines try to increase their own abilities. And that's what he said. And this is where you cross the line. As soon as you allow the machines to go ahead and figure out ways to increase their intelligence, they could theoretically just run by us real fast to where they're the intelligent one, and we're just kind of the ants on the ground. And and this is all sounds very realistic to me, and it's certainly worrisome to lots of people in the computer field. So these are real possibilities. So there are actually a number of possibilities how we could go on to another species, including there's the whole thing of Zhuao was a Chinese mouse who was born. This is an experiment that happened in China, and they created a whole creature out of just one of the mother's skin cells. And I know that people right now, we're avoiding that idea of cloning. But how long is that going to last? How long is it going to last before some person decides that we need a whole bunch more of me? And then we start really changing the human possibilities.
Well, is it Ray Kurzweil who wrote that book, the Synchronicity? I believe he's talking about in the not too distant future, probably by the middle of this century, we'll have that capacity perhaps to live forever by the rise in computers and the ability for human beings and machines to I guess, become one with the other.
Right.
We're going to go to, and that's a fascinating concept as well. I think he thought it was 2047. I started looking at the clock. I said at the calendar, I said, can I live that long? If you can just live long enough, you can live forever. We're going to take a short break here, and we're going to come back. This is Justice for All. If you've just joined us, we're with Michael Tennesen. He's a science writer, just wrote this fascinating book called The Next Species. We're going to have another 30 minutes with Mr. Tennesen when we come back from this break, so stay with us.
RM Designs T-shirt printing and more is located in Smithfield, but serves all of Hampton Roads. They specialize in vinyl designed shirts, apparel, window stickers, cups, and other specialty gifts. They also have rhinestone and embroidery designed apparel, and they offer Pandora-style beads and hardware to create a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. RM Designs T-shirt printing and more caters to businesses, sports teams, churches, groups, and family reunions. They also offer a great fundraising package should you be in need of money for a special project. And they also do home parties if you and your friends would like to get together and make your own creations. RM Designs T-shirt printing and more can be reached at 757-255-9140. That's 757-255-9140. Email them at rmdesigns11@aol.com or find them on Facebook at RM Twisted Designs. You can also place orders directly off their store at storeenvy.com/RM Twisted Designs.
Are you prepared to defend yourself and your family against any threat? Veteran-owned and operated One Shot Trading Post is ready to make sure that you are. Continuing training and classes on defense, survival, and weapons. Full gunsmithing services, special orders and financing available with military discounts. $15 transfers, and One Shot Trading Post is always looking to buy, sell, or trade. Located at 4366 Holland Road at South Plaza Trail, make sure that you're ready for anything at One Shot Trading Post, 463-5893, OneShotTradingPost.com.
Hi, this is Greg Bigaveris. Join me for Sports Scene each Wednesday from noon to 1 right here on News Talk 1650 WHKT. You can also hear the show on TuneIn as well. We will talk to local, regional, and nationally acclaimed sports guests, and we'll interact with our audience as well at Greg Bick on Twitter. Sports Scene, Wednesdays from noon to 1 right here on 1650 AM.
Denby Baptist Christian School is now enrolling students for the upcoming 2015-2016 school year. Denby Baptist Christian School offers a quality Christian education for students in kindergarten through the 12th grade and an early learning center for preschool children ages 2.5 to 4. DBCS is a ministry of Denby Baptist Church located in the Oyster Point section of Newport News, offering education marked by a biblical worldview, academic excellence, extracurricular activities, and affordability. Denby Baptist Christian School offers daily Bible classes and a weekly chapel service. Call and schedule your tour at Denby Baptist Christian School, 13010 Mitchell Point Road, Newport News. Call 757-249-2654. The mission of Denby Baptist Christian School is to educate the mind, nurture the soul, and shape the character of each student in a Christ-centered environment based on the truth of God's Word. Online at dbcs.org and dbcs-kids.org.
If finances are holding you back from enrolling your kids or grandkids in private Christian schools, call the radio station at 488-1010. We have a partnership program with several schools on the peninsula and the south side that allows us to offer a 35% discount off tuition for preschool through the 12th grade. Give us a call today at 488-1010 or visit our website at tuitionsolution.org. Did we mention we added daycares to the site? tuitionsolution.org.
Well, okay, we're back with Justice for All. I'm George Yates, and the sun is still shining out there, and we're just having a great time here talking about this book, The Next Species. And it's available, I guess, The Next Species, The Future of Evolution in the Aftermath of Man. I guess you've got it at Barnes & Noble and Amazon and all of the local, all the major places where anybody can buy a book. Is that right, Mike?
That's right. That's right.
And it just came out. This book was just, March the 17th? This book just came out last week.
Right. Last week, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's just a very cool idea. You know, I mean, you pick up the paper and you worry all about global warming and you read about species that die out, and then you read your book and you go, well, let's see. Species have been dying out since the beginning of time. So when a species dies,
Right.
it's not that. I mean, in one sense, you're kind of apocalyptic in your book. Well, man's going to die out. The Earth will survive. And then you see this mass extinction thing, but then you go, well, wait a minute. We've had 5 other mass. Tell us a little bit about. Uh-oh, what's that? Uh-oh.
Oh no! I'm here.
What about these mass extinctions when you realize that we might well kill ourselves off, and you say, well, no big deal. It's happened 5 other times. Your book's got a lot of history in it, a lot of biological and science and geological history. Tell us about the other mass extinction events before the one that you say might well happen in the future.
Well, what it is there's 5 mass extinction events. What we know the most about is the Cretaceous extinction, where it knocked out the dinosaurs.
And which led to man.
Which led to man. I mean, it led to mammals and man. Somebody told me, well, it didn't happen. Mammals. What happened was right after the mammals were scurrying around on the ground, hiding in the brush when the dinosaurs were out there. But as soon as we got rid of the dinosaurs, the mammals start increasing in size exponentially to where we end up with giant ground sloths and mammoths and giant rhinoceros and stuff like that. And then along the way, we start seeing primates, the animals that are like us. And that evolution is about 30 million years. And then we're only here for about 200,000 years. I mean, we're just really new on the planet, but we really have carved this planet. We've really changed a lot of things here. And so if we go through a mass extinction, we could actually go through another evolutionary cycle. It's even possible that mammals might be replaced by something else, a whole group of animals. We could actually go back to reptile, or we could go forward to something else. So it's actually, in other words, it's not nature just not, life lives on. I mean, life is indomitable. I don't think man is, but life is indomitable. And that's actually nature. Like you said before, we might lose nature in a mass extinction. I don't think so. Nature has survived in the Chernobyl area. We have packs of wolves in an area that is off limits, still off limits to man. I went to the Camp Pendleton in California, where they have all these ranges where they put in artillery and all this explosive stuff. And even in those areas, there's Harrier hawks and other creatures that are running around trying to grab the rabbits that get scared by the by the bombs going off.
Yeah.
And in the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea, I mean, there's rare species, and it's just a big park for nature. Nature.
Yeah, what I take from your book is actually even though in the one sense it's sort of apocalyptic that, well, we're going to kill ourselves off, there's going to be this mass extinction, but it's really positive in the sense that we could blow ourselves. If you read your book and take it to any kind of logical extension, you could say we could blow ourselves up with a nuclear holocaust and kill everybody on the planet, and over time, millions of years, the Earth would heal itself. All the radiation the radiation, all of it would eventually work its way out because geologic time is so long. So millions and millions and millions. It might take 50 or 100 million years even, but that's nothing when you talk about the life of the planet, because Earth is probably likely to be here at least another 500 million or another billion, another 500 million to 100 a billion years before the sun ultimately burns us out. So the Earth could survive just about anything that man throws at it, no matter what, and life would still go on at some point in the future. That's what you take from your book. Right.
Peter Ward, as a paleontologist at University of Washington, did a book on this, and he thought that he talks about how right now we're in the habitable zone of our solar system. Like Venus is too hot and Mars is too cold. But we're slowly drifting outwards. And he gives us the idea, or he speculates that it will be 700 million years longer before we're out of that habitable zone. So we have another 700 million years of a planet that is excellent for complex life. And he describes that he thinks man will actually survive the 700 million years, but that he'll end up at the end gate with no nature. Nature will not be in hand. And he also talks about how every once in a while man will there will be interruptions in the progress of man where he'll blow himself back to the Stone Age, and then he'll come back out. But I didn't find any. Like I said, I interviewed about 70 scientists, most of them right in front of them. I mean, I personally met them and talked with them, and I didn't run into anybody else that thought that man would last. I mean, a fellow at University, Jim Estes at University of Santa Cruz, University of California at Santa Cruz, said that man could last another 1,000 years, maybe even 10,000 years, but certainly not 1 million. And I talked to the fellow at the Smithsonian, and he talked, the curator of paleontology, and he talked about how 99.99% of all species have gone extinct, and there's really no reason to think that we're going to be any different.
And the average lifespan in geologic time of a species is 1 million years? Is that?
I think they said 1 million years for animals and 10 million years for plants.
And so man's been here 200,000 years. So another 10,000 or even 50,000 would put us really in the low range of
right.
And so. And how are we going to kill ourselves off? Then we're just going to basically just taking all the resources out. What's the likely scenario that man will kill ourselves off?
Well, I mean, there's just a whole slew of things. There's number one, there's just starvation. We basically are running out of land to plant our crops with. We went through the Norman Borlaug was the author of the Green Revolution, which taught us how to grow our corn and wheat on shorter stalks with by crossbreeding, shorter stalks that actually could hold the amount of grain that we can now produce with artificial fertilizers and improving methods of irrigation. And that actually, some people think that might have actually been, if he hadn't done that, that could have been the point where we start reversing our population explosion. But with it, we've just gone off. And, the majority of the population increase has really been since World War II, and a lot is attributed to now the new ability to grow grain that we didn't used to have. But I went to the Rothamsted Institute in England, and they're now trying to get, they've gone beyond the big jump in food to where it's exponential. It's like we're trying to get another 10% in the next 20 years, and so then what do? You all say, yeah, yay, we made it, and then if the population keeps growing, you have to keep doing that. And Jared Diamond looked at the Rwanda massacre, the big genocide in Rwanda, as really a product of food that the people had passed on. Each generation passed on their property to the next generation, and at one point there wasn't enough land to feed the families, and that actually touched off the genocide in Rwanda is his theory. So that, and then there's a group of atomic scientists have a 24-hour clock, and they think we're 3 seconds to midnight. We're not even. We're pretty close to anathema right now, and it's partially due to the proliferation of nuclear weapons, and we think that nothing's going to ever happen there. But over the next 1,000 years, do you think there's nothing going to happen there? It's kind of not likely when you see like how the world is now, and that, and food, and climate, and all these things, and the increase in disease. We just went through this Ebola crisis. I mean, how many more of those are going to come along? So it's probably not.
Wouldn't every one of those types of things, whether it's Ebola or a nuclear holocaust or anything, there are people that would survive no matter what, because they might be immune to the Ebola for whatever reason. They've got a mutation. I mean, the chances of it killing everyone would probably be pretty remote. So maybe you would end up like you were talking about Mount St. Helens, and or one of these other cataclysmic events where you kill off, let's say you got 9 million people or billion people on the earth. You kill off all but hundreds, and then you end up with a whole new race that flourishes in the aftermath. Maybe you end up with a stronger human race that can go maybe make it to the 700 million years.
Well, you're talking about, and what you're talking about is a better adapted man, which is the next species. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, if in the process, if in the process we change our genome through mutation, and all the things you talk about are great motivators for mutations, then if we come up with a species that is perhaps better adapted, and I know this is pie in the sky type things, but perhaps even more willing to work with each other.
Yeah.
And that's a little pie in the sky, but I could hope. And but if you come up with a species that's more adapted, then Darwin says that is going to eventually proliferate, and it will replace the last species. That's Darwin's theory of evolution.
Right. If you've just joined us, we're having this discussion with Michael Tennesen, who's the author of The Next Species. He's a science writer, talking in the book discusses that it's called The Future of Evolution in the Aftermath of Man. I've been listening recently to Dan Carlin, who I don't know if you know Dan, but he has a great radio broadcast. He's called Hardcore History, and he talks about the First World War, and I'm on part 5. And it's just fascinating when you start talking about listening to him talk about the First World War and how the French were throwing this Thunderbolt, Operation Thunderbolt, trying to finally knock out the Germans towards the end of that war in 1917. And 30,000 French troops die in a day as they're on this massive spring offensive. And I was just fascinated as I'm listening to this, because I'm thinking, what in the world is it about man? Because we have been trying to kill each other for thousands of years, and we still are. We have wars going on, and maybe the next species is going to be one, like you say, that evolves somehow through a genome, a change in that says, you know what, we don't want to have war anymore with each other. We want to work together for the planet. There would have to be some sort of a change in the way we tick, because we have this need, apparently, the human species, to fight each other. And maybe that's going to maybe the next species is going to have to be different, the way it thinks.
Well, I mean, if we eliminate each other through warfare, then what's left is the few people that didn't go to war. So it's not impossible. It's not impossible. People. But what scientists talk about is that your adaptability has to be. It doesn't necessarily address to world politics. It addresses your immediate environment. So coming up with another species would be more likely to its immediate environment. But today, I mean, our environment is also becoming globalized, and it could. I mean, that's what I think. I think that we could have another species that was more adaptable to the global political climate, which is kind of horrific right now.
What do you? What is your research into the actual as far as human beings themselves with regard to changing ourselves with genetic engineering? Who did you speak with about that?
With genetic, Rob Jackson. I talked to him. He's now he was at Duke University, now at Stanford University, and he was talking about just how what an enormous. He could foresee a day when Brad Pitt's sperm might be available at your local drugstore. I mean, and that the push is to try women wanting to have a beautiful children. I mean, just the whole. I just read this book about how education has changed throughout the world in this mad race to get our kids to think better and to learn faster and to basically score higher on all these tests. And it's really it's a worldwide phenomenon that has all those things have evolutionary pressures.
Well, and if that happens, then we're going to end up with the haves and have-nots in the genetic engineering field too, right? I mean, there's some people are going to have the money to say, gee, let's have some designer children, just like you can go out and afford a new Range Rover, and so those folks are going to have the beautiful, smart children, and the folks with no money, they're just going to be down there, and there's going to be even more. What do you want to call it? Income inequality, or just genetic inequality going forward, if that's possible.
Right. Huh. Well, I mean, genetic inequality is in some ways one of the motivators of evolution in general.
Right.
I mean, when something comes along that can do it better, they tend to overtake the last iteration of their family, of their race, of their clade. And so, I mean, this actually is a possibility. And so we want our next race. We want the next species to be beneficial. And we don't like this income inequality. So, but I don't know how we get. Maybe if he's just anti-nuclear, that would be a big thing. And if he's anti-killing each other, that would be a big thing. And maybe we could work later on. We could work later on income equality, or we could work now on income equality. However we want to do it. But this is not really up to our purvey. It's not something we have a lot of control over.
If you've just joined us, I'm George Yates. This is Justice for All, and we've spent almost the last hour here with Michael Tennesen, who's a science writer who has written this book, The Next Species. You live in the desert, in Joshua Tree National Park, and you're a science writer. You've written for the Discover, Scientific American, Natural Wildlife, Audubon, Smithsonian. You've been doing this a long time. What gave you the idea to do this book, first of all, and what's your next project?
Okay, it was the coming across Anthony Bernowski's paper on the mass extinction, which I get all these science feeds every day. Things they send me at least 100 or 200 ideas from different universities, and this one came through, and then I went up and saw him and talked to him, and that really spurred this book. And
who was this you spoke with? What's the name again?
It's Anthony Barnosky,
mm-hmm.
Barnosky, at the University of California at Berkeley.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked with several people at the University of California at Berkeley on this story as well. Leslea Halusko took me to the Serengeti, and we went to Olduvai Gorge, and I got to see all these amazing creatures, and so this was a very fruitful thing. I mean, so that established the first book. So this book, The Next Species, and what I'm trying to do, and I'm still searching for a great title, but I'm trying to do now a book on the can man survive without nature? Can humankind survive without nature? And I don't think so. And I go into this in this book a bit that New York needs the microbes and the roots in the soil and the Cascade Mountains to clean its water, The Central American, east coast of Central America needs mangroves and saltgrass and coral reefs to attenuate, to slow the hurricanes that come in there and the large waves. And there's lots of different reasons. We need nature. We need nature for pollination of our plants, for insect control. Nature, the birds and the bees and the bats. Birds and the bats actually control insects for a lot of our agricultural areas, and nature is important for creating oxygen. The rainforests and the plankton in the oceans are really the dominant sources of oxygen on Earth now, and so these are all really important sources of that we need.
Can we change? Can we change our behavior, you think, in order to save nature? You think it's possible based on your research?
There's been some major changes in thought in terms of slavery, the abolition of slavery. That's a major change of thought. Giving the women's suffrage, giving them right, and the growing progress we've had there has been a major change in thought. The attitude toward gays is the changes in now, or those are major shifts of thought. We could have a major shift of thought in terms of our handling of nature. I don't think we still survive forever, because all these other biological actions are in progress, and but if we do so, maybe we could enjoy I think that what it is you and I and Homo sapiens has a limited lifespan. But if we're basically on a long continuum, 600 millions of complex life, 600 million years of complex life. But if we get a better perspective of ourselves, if we start thinking of ourselves as the most important thing on the planet, if we could just slow down, pull back, and start acting like a part of life on Earth rather than the whole reason for existence, we might last longer and we might enjoy what we have left better.
Yeah, it's just like cutting back on your cholesterol, right? I mean,
right.
you have. It's like some point. Some people reach a certain point, and they reach an age where they say, "Wait a minute, I need to start taking better care of my body," and I'm gonna quit smoking or something like that. So mankind needs to say, we're gonna change the way we think about things. I mean, we're gonna go on diet, and we're gonna start doing yoga and start taking care of ourselves, and maybe we got a chance.
Yeah. Maybe we got a chance.
Well, that's
and we have a better chance of enjoying what we have left.
Yeah, and and hopefully it will happen. I think if enough people like you are writing books like this, we'll get the message. Listen, thanks a lot for being with us. We've spent the last hour here with Michael Tennesen. He's the author of The Next Species: The Future of Evolution in the Aftermath of Man. It's available on Amazon and at Barnes & Noble, and it's an excellent book. It's from Simon & Schuster, and we look forward to his next book. And really, thanks a lot for being with us today, Mike.
Thanks for having me, George. I really appreciate it.
Oh, great. Okay, well, then we're going to move on then, and we're going to have some CBS news here in just a minute. How long before we go to break here, D? We got a couple of minutes. Wow, what a great show that was with Mr. Tennesen here. The Next Species: The Future of Evolution in the Aftermath of Man. And if you've just listened to the last hour, if you do get this book, it's fascinating from the standpoint of he gets into how life got here in the first place. A lot of Darwin's theories. He goes to the Galapagos. He goes to the rainforests in South America. He goes to coral reefs. He talks to scientists all over the country who are experts in all this sort of thing. And he gets in. So it's really a fascinating overview of the whole geology and the origins of Earth, the origins of life, and then these mass extinctions, which we've had 5 of them. The most recent one was this one with the that knocked out the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. But there were 4 other mass extinctions prior to that, hundreds of millions of years ago, which basically led to a whole new species that came up after most of those species were destroyed. So the premise of his book is that life will go on this planet with or without human beings. Hopefully human beings will last longer if we start taking care of ourselves and taking care of the planet that supports us. Thank you for joining us for this last hour on Justice for All. I'm George Yates. We're going to have a great guest coming up in the next hour. Her name is Kate Delaney. She's the author of Level the Playing Field. We're going to be talking sports in the next hour, March Madness, spring baseball, and everything else. So stick with us after the CBS News. I'm George Yates. We'll be right back.
Deborah Rodriguez, a president.